Hello, welcome to our first session on rigging. So in this first session, what we're going to do, we're going to actually focus on preparing the mesh for rigging. Here I've got a mesh with a main body, the eyes, the teeth and the tongue, as well as the costume. And that's how it's been grouped. You've got the costume and you've got the body. The first thing you do with rigging, you need to verify the integrity of the main deforming mesh, in other words, the body mesh. First of all, you need to make sure that the entire mesh with its costume and everything is above the ground plane and also is centered properly, and there are no transformations, no history, and it's grouped nicely, and the pivot point is dead in the center. And the next thing to do is to actually clean up the mesh, first of all making sure that there are no issues, no flipped faces, and certainly there are no unmerged components like vertex points and so on and so forth. So you can go to mesh cleanup and then click on the non-manifold geometry only, and normal and geometry, and apply, and it will actually indicate if there are any issues with the mesh. The other thing you can do, you can actually verify it by going to send the you can send the mesh to Mudbox, and Mudbox will give you some, if there are any errors. In my case, I don't see any errors. If you get errors to do with the symmetry, you can actually go to mesh, make symmetrical, and there, based on whichever side is clean. For instance, you can say from right to left, so the tick box shows that the right side. In your case, if the right side is fine, if there are issues on the left hand side, and if there is a symmetry issue, you can actually symmetrize through here, make symmetrical, and then go to File, send the mesh. If I just do it here, make symmetrical, and what Mudbox does, creates another copy of it, and it's that copy that you will select, and you will send that back to Maya by updating the scene. And whatever old mesh you've got, you can delete it and just keep this one. The trouble with this is that if you have a UV map, Mudbox deletes the UV map, so that's a bit of a problem. So you have to either save the UV set or keep a copy of your original mesh and then transfer the attributes of the original mesh. Assuming that this is your original mesh and this is your new mesh, you can actually go mesh, transfer attributes, and pick the component or UV and then apply, and that will transfer the UVs. Now the best thing to do is actually use a professional plugin rather than using Mudbox to verify it, and we've got this thing called Advanced Skeleton, and that one I've downloaded for you. It's under the scripts. So Advanced Skeleton, you simply drag and drop the installation into Maya, and what we'll do, it will actually create the Advanced Skeleton links for you. If you want to apply those to a clean shelf, first of all go to settings, under your shelf, a new shelf, and just call it a name, my rigging tools, and simply drag and drop the script file, and you will end up with something like this. Now what the Advanced Skeleton does, if I just launch it, here we go. The Advanced Skeleton enables you to actually model check and also group your model as well. Now I've already grouped it, but what it's doing basically, when you go to model clean, you can ask it to create a top level group called Geo. Well, you already got it, but it will actually put everything in there, anything to do with geometry. But if I click on the clean, That's it. It puts the model, it helps you to put the model dead in the center with light symmetry. And the other thing you can do is go to model check, and that checks any issues with cleanup and so on and so forth. So I don't have any problem there, but if I was to check the one of the costumes, for example, doesn't have any issue, and this one, okay, it says selected vertices are not symmetrical. I'm just going to say continue anyway. So that means I need to get into this mesh and actually check to see how I can bring the symmetry back. And the way I do it, provided that I'm aware of the UV, so I'll just go, I have to attach the UVs later on, by the way, because I'm going to end up cutting half of it. So I tend to delete half of the mesh, or I could just, as I said, transfer the attributes in Maya. I can actually symmetrize this in Mudbox. Now, one of the reasons why I'm getting this, because the mesh is not fully enclosed. So I'm just going to select these, making sure just the border edges are selected. Nothing else is selected, just the border edges. In other words, the border edges facing the axis, something like this. Verify it by pressing number 4. And then what I tend to do, I tend to scale everything like this along the X, holding on to X button or snap to the grid. I move it to a place where I can just select all those vertex points and just squash it like this. Now it's all aligned, and then I can hold on to X button with the move tool selected, bring it back, and then I'll go mesh, mirror, option box, -X, so this side, and press apply. To avoid any collapse, I've actually put a mesh threshold of 0.001. Okay, making sure it's all okay. I've got a triangle there, I have to subdivide that later on. Double check. And then I could go to the UV editor and actually start attaching my UVs back to where it was before. So after I've done all of that and fixing my UVs back to where they were before, and making sure there are no overlaps, I can do model check, fine. So that's how you do it, and the same thing applies to the trousers. The shoes, obviously, I tend to focus on one of them, clean it up once I'm happy, UV mapped and everything, ready in a group. One, I need to name each component. Once I'm happy with it, I tend to kind of put the pivot point dead in the center, duplicate it, scale X to flip to the other side, and then freeze the transformations. And once I'm happy, I'll then bring everything back to where they are, and like this. So yeah, model clean, and model check all the rest. So that's done, and the next thing to do is just make sure your character is in the right scale by going to I'm done with this, guys. I'm just going to turn it off by going to create, measure tools, distance tool. I'm holding on to X button to snap to the grid, and also one in here. So it's 175 centimeters up to that point, and I'm just going to increase it. Here we go. So this character is roughly 186.4 centimeters, and I verified that I've got centimeters here under my settings. So that's done, and the last thing to do is I've created some kind of color guides So topology wise, where there are points of articulation, and obviously the spine and everything else is kind of nice and clean there, but where there are points of articulation where we know there are deformation, making sure that you've got at least 3 loops, one in the center, one below, one above. Same around here. Actually, this could slightly go forward. The ball joint is somewhere around there, but if it affects these areas of the foot. The same with the thighs. We've got actually quite a dense areas there. The same with the wrist, elbow, shoulder, the neck, and then you've got these areas. These has to do with facial muscles, the orbital, the eye socket, the eyelids, and so on and so forth. This is the most basic. Again, depending on the type of the mesh, obviously we can go further and define the muscles and things like that, but this guy's going to wear garments. The next thing to do is we've done the topology, so above the ground plane we check the scale and then we put stuff onto layers. So here we can select the group, create a layer here, call this pirate mesh layer. So I know the name of the character, click OK. That means when we reference this mesh into a new file for rigging, we can turn the mesh on and off. So let's just select it, hold on to the right mouse button, add selected object, and then we can verify it by clicking on the V key, and we can template it, we can reference it. It means when we click we can't edit it, we can just focus on other things, or we can just release it so we can click on it. And that's it really, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next session.